All right, so I'm Chris Buck. I do a lot of IT consulting for different environments, DoD, intelligence agencies, Fortune 150 companies, and we've made the transition from the in-place upgrade task sequence to servicing approach. However, we're still using some task sequence items that were put together by Gary and Mike Terrell over at the Big Bank. So we're still leveraging the CompasScan task sequence, and I believe Mike is also doing the same thing. Would you be able to move forward, Mike?
Yes.
So we're actually running the CompasScan task sequence, and we're also tattooing items on the system. So once we do that, we can go ahead and inventory all the data and provide our customers with a pre-Windows migration candidate dashboard. This definitely helps, avoid situations where there's a hard blocker that the end user might not be aware about or the customer might not be aware about. So we can actually go ahead, see what's going to be a problem, and remediate that device. So as you can see here, we have a couple of systems that were going through the in-place upgrade process. We changed that report to be leveraged for the servicing process. And then we were able to also use that task sequence to remediate those findings. So it could be like something like an application needs to be upgraded, security tool typically, or a driver needs to be disabled or upgraded. So we found that out in advance, as well as we're also only targeting systems that are online, that has had a good hardware inventory sent back. If it hasn't had hardware inventory sent back in X amount of days, we'll go ahead and manually kick it off and investigate it, so we can just remediate whatever we can in advance. A couple of different places we're just throwing out great task sequences or servicing approach without doing any type of pre-scans. And that's what we're bringing to the table for the different customers. Can you move forward?
Sure.
And then this report right here is just something else that we provide to the project management team to say, hey, these systems were hard blockers, these systems were remote, on the VPN, not on site. We're tattooing the system at the time of running that CompasScan task sequence. And we can also tell with a system that takes a significantly longer time to run the CompasScan, now it's going to tattoo the time from downloading to actually executing and completion. So we can also identify systems that we may think might have a hardware failure in advance by saying, hey, if a system takes, 5 hours or so to run the CompasScan task sequence, it's going to be a poor experience for the customer when it comes to actual time to upgrade. So we can actually set those devices aside as well as a hardware replacement scenario. Next slide.
Okay. Now, if you are, I'm sure a lot of organizations might not be have the resources to implement things like desktop analytics, some of the advanced reporting that Chris was just talking about. For example, where I work, we just don't have the staffing resources to do a lot of these things just yet. So what we've put together, I guess, could be considered the budget alternative, and that's to take advantage and leverage what you've already collected in Config Manager through hardware inventory and software inventory, and then using basically building on that same model of WAS that Mike Terrell and Gary Block have put together with a multi-phase approach, and building out collections that you can use to start acting as filters to pull machines in and out of the system. And here I've got a couple of screenshots of some sample ones that we use. For example, as machines are going through the process, we don't want them to, we're not going to be doing Windows 7 machines. So we have a collection that'll filter all the Windows 7 machines. We got collections that'll filter out of the process machines that are running on current Win 10, or machines that are running on unsupported hardware. So we have like a number of collections kind of dovetailed together to kind of, again, catch the problematic machines so that you can address them, replace them if you need to. You have collections to catch machines that have, they haven't been active in Active Directory. There's a double word for it. So you have machines that have not aged out of config manager, but perhaps they've been retired. So no sense of them, these phantom machines flowing through the process to then have to answer to management. Well, how come these machines haven't upgraded yet? Well, because they don't exist and they haven't aged out of config manager. So we have queries that'll identify machines that are out no longer in Active Directory and haven't updated their machine password, that sort of thing. But they're still in config man. We also have collections put together for kind of the highly critical, very hands-on type machines. Being a health system, we don't want to accidentally start an upgrade on a machine in an operating room, unexpectedly, for example, or machines that are in the emergency department, that sort of thing. So we have collections that'll pull them out of the automated process so that the device support teams could handle the upgrades essentially by hand, manually kicking them off, working in coordination with the staff in the emergency room, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so this is basically the short of the capacity tasks that we're running. We're running it hidden. In addition to finding out if a system is compatible or not, we're also taking the time to clean up some space on an end user's device. We're clearing out the C Windows temp, C users temp, in a couple of different locations, as well as we've already tattooed the system that says it has a bad or ineligible, incompatible driver. We've tattooed it, so now we're running through again and we're disabling that. So now that system is a good migration candidate and is no longer a hardware replacement candidate. And then over here to the right, that's just basically a run script that we're leveraging that we can also use to clean up space. Certain environments, they have Nomad, so we're cleaning out this particular run script, Nomad cache, as well as the CCM cache, just to free up a little bit more space on the end user's device. So we use some of these remediation items in addition to a compliance item to clean up a few things on the end user's device as well. Let's go forward. Oh, and this is an example of what SetupDiag looks like on your system once it's ran. A number of people, I think, Mike, you run SetupDiag in advance, or do you wait till afterwards?
We have it buried in, so it's kicked off automatically as part, in the case of a failure.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, a couple people run SetupDiag as part of their capacity and task sequence in advance. More discussion will be had on SetupDiag because I know Adam has a lot of things to say about it during his session. So we'll just go ahead and leave that screenshot up there and say, hey, this is what it looks like on the system.
Yeah, Chris, it's Paul here. Yeah, I'm one of those people who uses and leverages SetupDiag as part of a pre-assessment piece. So I'll run the compat scan. And then once the compat scan comes back, I'll leverage SetupDiag to scoop up the information, grab that registry key, bring that into config manager, and also collect the logs as well.
Next slide.
Thank you. So this is part that I really like also. With the servicing approach, we still get to go ahead and leverage some of the same items that we would do during a normal in-place upgrade via custom actions. So we have a pre-staging feature update content task sequence. I run it hidden in the background, and we create special directories where we want to stage content. So every time we do an OS upgrade, we're also upgrading the drivers at the same time. So we create a folder, cutil, operating system name or version number, and then folders like scripts, custom action, drivers, language packs. So we go ahead and stage this all in advance. Now what we're doing in the different environments that I've done this in is we're leveraging a legacy package with the drivers compressed. We've definitely seen great success with this approach. Drivers are definitely getting upgraded. Drivers are coming down much quicker than before on-site scenario, VPN scenario, over CMG. All the content's getting staged significantly quicker with drivers in the legacy compressed package. So here in the pre-staging task sequence, we have everything staged, and then we are also creating the additional folders for our custom actions. And some of our custom actions are going to handle things like reporting. And we can talk a bit more in depth about that towards the end on how we're handling that. Are you also doing a pre-staging feature update content type of task sequence, Mike?
Yes, we are. One of the things with the compressed drivers, I know you got it coming up here, but particularly with so many machines being off-site, one of the things we're able to do is we've added an action in there that does a hash check between does a hash check between the file that has already been downloaded and the file that's up on the server, so that essentially we just download it the once, and then the next time that pre-staging sequence runs, if it finds that it matches, okay, no need to go chewing up the user's home internet connection to download it a second time and a third time and additionally. So the compressed drivers, it really makes that easy to pull off.
I love that option, Mike. I'm totally stealing that. We've been agonizing over how to do that. Like, how do we do this? Yeah, that is fantastic. I'm stealing it.
The only catch is you're going to want to create like a CSV or some sort of table of your hash values of the files up on the server. Because trying to run the hash, trying to generate the hash from the client across their VPN connection to a file on the server is going to take a long time. In the testing I was done, it was taking longer to generate the hash than it would have taken to actually download the file again. So we have with the pre-staging, I just have a simple CSV file that has, the package IDs and the hash values that gets downloaded as part of with the other like setup complete and all that sort of thing. And then there's a step in the task sequence that says, okay, it's supposed to use package CM100275, looks it up in the table, generates the hash off the local copy that's already downloaded, does the comparison. If it's different, then okay, either the driver package has been updated or has been replaced, and it'll download it, and it'll re-download it. But if it finds the hash values are the same, just skips over it. Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to steal the show.
Oh no, I need to talk to you about that.
Mike, I think you need to just go ahead and make sure you log that out because we need that.
Thank you.
Next slide. Oh, and then this is just a breakdown of how the child task sequence that I'm using to stage the compressed drivers looks. Basically, the PassScan calls the child task sequence to stage compressed drivers. This will stage it in the location that I've created earlier, as well as extracted that zip folder. And again, we definitely saw a significant increase on times for downloading and staging on site. I want to say the content was 60 or so % compressed, a bit smaller, about 60%, as well as the download staging time was about 60% faster. Now that definitely increased once we got to a VPN scenario. We had a driver package that I want to say was 800 meg compressed. It took an hour and some change to download and stage it. Then moving forward with the compressed package, less than 7 minutes. And easier, none the wiser at all. It is much easier to have a customer on VPN for 30 minutes out of their day versus give me 2 days on VPN and hopefully we get the content there. So this is definitely the approach I'm recommending going with the legacy compressed packages. Next slide. Subconfig on this one was definitely something that I enjoyed working with. So support many different environments. We definitely want to set up everything we can in our subconfig INI to be reusable. So some items like the locker suspend, you're going to see that anywhere. Compass can ignore warning. You definitely want to have that in place. And when you have your task sequence scenario, the in-place upgrade OS step has a checkbox for ignore warning. This pretty much does the same exact thing. It passes this from subconfig RNI as command line parameters to the setup engine. So the things that you definitely want to keep in place for the highest success rate possible is to enable your dynamic update as well as compat ignore warning to have as few rollbacks as possible. Now, in my different environments, we support different languages. So we definitely have that in place. We have a pre-staged. If you have something cited in your setup config INI and that does not exist on the system, like for example here, install drivers C util 1809 / drivers, if the folder is not there, it'll completely fail. It will not do the upgrade for you because it's checking for that location, and since it's not there, problem, immediate exit.
I'm just going to interject here for a minute. I laughed so much when Chris called me and said, "Man, I'm using your stuff and it's just not working. What's going on here?" And then that was the issue. He put a path in the file. He didn't actually. It was the wrong path, or the stuff wasn't there. And I was like, "Oh man, I totally ran into that one before." So you get all these extra new feature update failure messages. That's like, what? Wait, what are all these things? And it's because you messed up the setup config INI. So good luck with it.
Yeah, and when you mess up something in the setup config INI, if you go to the setup.log, oftentimes it's not generated because it's so early in the process where the failure occurs. So that was definitely something interesting to troubleshoot.
Sorry, one additional thing is one trick that I've used even in a task sequence to help mitigate issues with the drivers not being in the drivers thing but still in the command line is just get a single dummy INF file and always make sure that INF file is in the drivers folder even if you have no other new drivers for that machine. That way you don't have to mess with your INI path. You can always leave that there, but you can have some content in that folder.
So, matter of fact, when you speak about content in the folder, make sure it's present. We're leveraging compliance items to make sure these folders exist, as well as content inside of it. So we have like a compliance item that's being used to make sure the setup complete CMD is there, present in that C util 1809 content folder. And you can have that apply to different folder structures as well, just to make sure it's there to avoid that failure scenario. Now, since this environment is pretty new to leveraging the servicing model, one of the things that we're also doing is we're staging not just scripts that we're running on the device, but troubleshooting notes onto the device. What we need from the tier 1 technician to give me, so I can provide immediately actionable fixes, will be a text document, troubleshooting that text document staged on the device. So it's definitely something that you can use to aid in troubleshooting in the future.
Yeah, that's a good blog post, Chris.
Ooh, let's go to the next slide. I forgot that was actually in this slide deck. So this is the starter version of the compliance item that I was mentioning about. So our safety design really depends on if the candidate is good or not, if the content's staged or not, if everything else meets this checkbox requirement. And this is pretty much something that you can leverage a compliance item to create the collection. As long as the compliance item says it's good, it's compliant, collection gets evaluated with the results, and you can just start deploying to that system because you know it's going to be a successful upgrade. Let's check out the next slide.
One moment, please. I actually opened up the wrong slide deck. Leave it to me. I'm just doing great here today.
Have you not got my section, Mike?
So I've been in different environments where we've actually changed the setconfig INI, so you can actually leverage the compliance item not just for is setconfig INI present, but is this version config INI present.
Okay, now we should be back in business. Sorry about that, fellas.
Hey, we're all just people here, Mike. It's all good.
Sure, I
right.
flubbed the language backs question and then I opened up the wrong slide deck. I'm doing great this morning.
I thought I wasn't going to be needed. All right, it's Paul Winstanley here. Sorry, just to introduce myself. Okay, so there's some great community, well, not community, but kind of free tools that we leverage for pre-assessment. And, you know, I'm a big fan of CompatScan and SetupDiag myself. And it works in various scenarios, such as customers who are running Windows 10 Pro and they can't tap into something like desktop analytics. So I'm going to give you a brief overview on the time we've got left around desktop analytics. I was hoping to demo some of this, but as always, whenever I do these presentations, something cocks up in my lab and my lab's not available. So I've got screenshots to run through. You know, a screenshot can tell 1,000 words, but they'll do for now. So effectively with desktop analytics, if you don't know what it's all about, we're gathering telemetry from around the world from onboarded computers that are sending information up that's giving you the ability to tap into that. You have to onboard your machines and your devices into the analytics workspace to gather that information for yourself, to look at your application suite and get some identifiable risks on your driver set. It allows you to create some data-driven pilot rings, and by that I mean it's as you approve things, this pilots will be dynamically as created, so you know devices added to the pilot as you approve your application suite. It gives you some cool kind of post-update insights as well. So, for example, you upgrade to 1909, and you find an application that you're working on is crashing a bit more frequently. So you have some kind of before and after stats that you can take a look at, and also with that, it can give you information around other versions of that app that are running in the world, and you know, are they running more successfully? Yeah, okay, well, maybe we upgrade to version 5 if version 4 is not working for us, and that kind of thing. So if you're kind of familiar with Windows Analytics previously and upgrade readiness, which could be utilized outside of Config Manager, unfortunately that's not available at the moment. There's nothing for Intune to tap into, so this is Config Manager only, tied into that, because you can start to look at deployment plans which you can push to your Config Manager collections. And a bit of reasoning around that from Microsoft was to help people who are still stuck on Win 7 or were kind of trying to migrate away from leveraging in this information and then moving up. But you know, once you're on 10, the idea is that you can keep checking baseline to baseline as you move forward. To kind of get set up, you need something in Azure. So you go into the Endpoint Manager portal and you create your desktop analytics workspace. You'll need a global admin account to do that. And then you go back into Config Manager and create the Azure service, go through all the permissioning, etc. for that, adding in a commercial ID that the workspace has kind of created for you as you've set that up. And then you define your collections and devices that you're going to onboard. So you can have like an overriding one with some extra ones as well added in, and also telemetry level. So to get the best experience here, you need to go with what's called optimal limited to get application usage details, health metrics, and that kind of thing populated in the console. Recommendation is that clients are running the latest release update levels. And also, you know, if you're talking out onto the internet, into Azure, make sure that you're communicating, your endpoints can communicate correctly with all the ones. And there's a big knowledge base article with all the endpoints that need to be defined in your proxy. Onboarding can take a while. As I say, I'm having problems with my log. It's still in my lab, sorry, and it's still telling me that it's going to take up to 72 hours to get the data back, and that's been for a little while now. Once it's on board, information is updated on a 24-hour basis. If you can flick to the next slide there, Mike. Okay, just to give you some idea here, it's around creating a deployment plan. You have kind of some global settings, but you want to sort of focus down on a deployment plan. So to give you an idea, you need to pick a version that you're going to be checking against. So for example, it could be a 1909 feature update that you're doing. So you'd select the 1909 version, and then you know which collection you're going to choose with your devices in there. So like I say, you could have multiple collections, but you can click on the one that you're going to select for this particular deployment and testing process. When it comes to the thresholds, you can help ease some of the problems around drivers by ticking this box here on that image on the right there. There's a little on-off switch. By turning that on, you're going to deprioritize your driver problems because your devices will be leveraging Windows Update for drivers and get the correct ones where required. But there's this low install count threshold for your app. So what you're trying to do here is define apps that you will deem as noteworthy and apps that will be installed on X amount of percentage of devices in your estate. So, for example, if you have 100 devices that you're managing, if the apps are on more than 2% of the devices, then they'll be included in for checking. If you can just click onto the next slide again, Mike. Okay, so any of this work goes in 3 steps. Okay, you have a prepare stage, and that's all about approving apps and saying they're ready to go. Then you have a piloting stage before finally deploying out. So in this sort of overview, we're just concentrating on those first 2 steps, which is our kind of effectively our pre-assessment. Okay, if you can click on Mike.
Okay.
Okay. So it's hard to see, I think, on some of these screenshots, but effectively, when you plan that, you've got your collection and your noteworthy apps. They will all appear in here, and then you have to kind of go through in this section. It's called Identify the Importance section, which you can just about see on the top left there. But in these sort of screenshots here, 36,000 apps have been recommended. So this is quite a large estate where these screenshots have come from. And then there's a column around recommended devices, and you have to kind of go through and assign applications as being reviewed or review in progress or whatever. But you can leverage some of the telemetry from the cloud because there's a set of sort of recommendations from Microsoft, which is based on the telemetry. So, for example, this one here, System Center Endpoint Protection, is classed as highly adopted. You can maybe make out a link there, maybe not. What that means is that particular app is running on over 100,000 devices worldwide. So you could kind of be relatively safe in the knowledge that that isn't problematic and can be approved for use in your pilot. There's also an adopted choice as well, and that's I think it's running over 10,000 devices worldwide. So by leveraging that information, a highly adopted or adopted state, you can start to sort of click and approve and make things go through. So just to kind of show you from the drop downs there's an upgrade decision, review in progress, ready with remediation or enable. And what you select from that drop down will then sort of allow that to go through, and the devices that are running that will then appear in the pilot ready to go. So on the upgrade decision, an enable and a review in progress will stop the the device being the devices that are running that from being added to the pilot. But also, if you note, kind of just to the left, there's another drop down which is around the actual application as well. Critical or important decision on the app would mark that to go into the pilot. So you've kind of got to use those two decisions to force those through and make your informed choice for your piloting. If you can just click one more, Mike. So what you have here then is, if you look at the recommended devices, so these are the devices that have been recommended for pilot based on your choice around the apps. That's a dynamic number that, as you start to sort of click and choose, will increase or decrease accordingly. Pilot devices included, there's actually a global section which is kind of, you know, all your Win 10 devices, and they can be included in this as well. So you kind of get the more the merrier. You get a better metric back on success or failure. When you start to push out, you get some information back around that deployment status, which you can use and report back on to you know, determine whether you should be pushing any further. For example, here on this ring, there's quite a lot have come up as compliant, but you get devices that show up with needing attention. Some could say they're stuck. I think the right-hand figure there's 11 stuck on that particular example. So you're getting some information that you can then sort of drill into and find and try and discover more as to why they've stopped. Once you're happy with that pilot, you can then start to push out to a wider audience, and with the third part of the 3 steps there, which is to deploy broadly out to the estate. So there you go. That's a brief overview on how to use desktop analytics in a very, very short space of time.
And that's it.
Yep.
Excellent, guys.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. We're going to hold questions on this topic till the end. We've been answering some in the chat. I'm going to stop this recording and